Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Well, a good Monday afternoon to you. You are listening to Carolina Catholic Radio Charlotte on AM 1270. We're also streaming live at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. It's Faith and Sport coming to you live 2 to 3 here on Carolina Catholic Radio. I'm producer of Faith and Sport and your co-host, Chris, and your host for today's show, the one, the only, Dr. John Acquaviva.
Everybody sit down. It's just me.
Man, listen to those fans. They're going wild.
I know. I think there's more than last week. This is fantastic. Folks, welcome to the show. However, wherever you're listening to us, this is Faith and Sport, where we apply our Catholic faith to all aspects of sports. So whether you're a parent, an athlete, whether you're a coach, administrator, or referee, this is the sport for you. Or this is the show for you. This is the sport for you as well.
That's
so whatever
right.
sport you're involved in.
I feel like it's a 1 hour workout after we get done with the show.
I agree with that. To agree, it is a workout of our spirituality, a workout of our body. Here's what we're going to do today. We're going to have a workout with Carlos Herrera for our hit and miss. He's going to join us just in 2 minutes. We're going to do our weekend headlines, which are going to change your life, or at least there's a good chance they're going to. We have guest. He's going to join us via the phone as well in the second half of the show. Father Jeffrey Kirby, pastor of Our Lady of Grace in Lancaster, South Carolina. And it's important for a couple reasons. First of all, this guy's a great guy. He's a great priest. He's on fire priest, but he is also our pastor. Alicia and I and our family belong to that new parish. In fact, I mentioned this on these airwaves just a couple months ago. We're going to do the quick Q&A with Dr. A and our Pope quote of the week to wrap it all up. Now, before we get to Carlos Herrera to do our hit and miss, Chris, do you remember... It was about maybe 6 weeks ago, we had the representative it was a Catholic priest by the name of Father Steve Pullis, and he came on representing the bishop to talk about the policy they had where there was no games or practice on Sundays in the entire diocese for grade school or high school kids. Mm-hmm. Father Kirby has been the chaplain for 2 other high schools in which he instilled a similar policy. And actually what he did is, he'll tell us, he just made a recommendation for it. So we're going to talk to him how that went, what facilitated that, and so forth. But I thought that was a great conversation with Father Steve Pullis. It'll be interesting to get Father Kirby's as well. How was your weekend, brother?
It was great. I watched the Wolfpack and their defeat against the Duke Blue Devils.
That's
I was
right.
really happy, along with all the other fans that were there watching that game. I mean, that was
right.
awesome. And to see Coach K just sitting there like, what in the world just happened?
They had no idea. What was the final score? I want to say it was 88-66. They smoked them.
66, yeah. And after the game, they asked Coach K what happened. He said, well, all I can say is the Wolfpack showed up and we didn't.
Here's my thinking, Chris, is Coach K and the Duke Blue Devils felt a lot like Deontay Wilder in that heavyweight fight over the weekend.
Yeah.
The fight got called. I think Coach K probably wishes that fight would have got called. I thought that was their best victory of the year, one of the best victories they've had. Because not only did they beat Duke, one of the top-rated teams, they crushed them.
That's right.
Right? 22 points.
And tomorrow night, I hope they can do the same to the Tar Heels.
Absolutely. In fact, the Tar Heels are so down, I'll be shocked if they don't.
Yeah.
Folks, you're listening to Faith and Sport here on Carolina Catholic Radio. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. I teach exercise physiology at Wingate University, but every Monday I come down here to talk about faith and sport. So thank you for joining us today. Let's bring on our guest just about each and every week. He is Carlos Herrera. He is a certified soccer coach up in the Washington, D.C. area, longtime friend of mine, and becoming a greater and greater friend of this show. Carlos, welcome back to the show, buddy.
Nice to have me on, Dr. Acquaviva. Great to do the radio show again with you.
No, this is always great, buddy.
They're my fans. They show up every week.
I know,
they're very loyal. They travel.
Chris, this doesn't make much sense. I think they're cheering louder for Carlos than they are for me, but this is one of the reasons we're giving Carlos more time, because I think he's terrific. Carlos, do you have a hit or miss for us this week, buddy?
I have. Mine always end up being one, like they could go either way, but I'm going to go with the hit from this perspective. My goddaughter, I'm the godparent for a gal named Anna, who is a basketball player, her senior year, at McDaniels College in Maryland.
Yep.
And this was her last game, her last home game, and so it was a really important game for them. And one of the things that you and I have talked about on some of the different shows is sportsmanship, right?
Yep.
From the players towards the refs and the fans in the stadium. And I thought it should be interesting to see. It's really the first game that I had attended, which makes me a bad godparent. But not taking that into account, I wanted to know what the environment was going to be in this college gym and last game. And at the beginning of the game, the announcer for the stadium did make an announcement about sportsmanship, about how between players, refs, fans, that this was an environment we wanted to support good sportsmanship. And he went on to say a couple things, and I thought, well, that's great. And I thought to myself immediately, this is something that they should be doing in youth sports, like right before every game.
Yeah. Somebody
should say that to the fans, particularly in youth sports. But so that was great. And the one thing, the game went without incident. The one thing that really kind of made me pause was when the opposing team, this was played at McDaniels College, so they were the home team.
Mm-hmm.
When the opposing team, the girls would go and shoot a free throw.
Free throw, yeah.
After a penalty, everything's quiet. The gal's dribbling and getting ready to line up the shot.
Right.
Right as she's about to shoot, some guy on the fan side, right behind the basket, yells out really loud, "Rah!" Some sort of loud scream, and that that really bothered me. Like I felt like I didn't feel like that's fair, right? And
yep.
I wouldn't want that being done to my girls if it was my team or Anna's team if they were in the other court. And the guy did it several times, and he was sheepish every time he did it, and people looked around, and then a couple people started getting into it, thought it was funny. But if I was sitting next to him, I would have told him,
be quiet, Buster.
Down.
Yeah. Now, just out of curiosity, this is McDaniel College. This is a Division III university. I've been on that campus. It's a really small school. They play Division III sports. My guess is there's probably less than a couple hundred people in the stands, right?
Because it was the last game,
there was more.
There had to be maybe 500 to 1,000 people. It was
that's pretty
good. Big crowd.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So, let me ask you this: when you go to one of the most raucous games you and I have ever attended, at least together, certainly right up there with anything I've ever attended, especially for the decibel level of the given number of people, was a DC United game that we went to a little over 10 years ago. Do you remember that? Well, I don't know if you remember going with me because you go to so many of those games, but man, they are a fired-up crowd. They're a loud crowd. They're very excited. They are all about the home team. And, of course, it's not just a game. It's an experience, right?
Yeah.
So here's my question to you. What if you're up for a penalty kick, or the DC United is up for a penalty kick, or even better, the opposing team is in, at the time, it was RFK Stadium, and if the opposite team was going for a penalty kick to tie the game with less than a minute to go, would you be frustrated with the DC United fans and want them to be quiet during that penalty kick?
As a fan, I wouldn't particularly be quiet for that. Right?
What's the difference?
Well, I think it's a great point, right? And I will say there are things that fans say in the stands of my own team which I abhor and would say something to people next to me. But when you're on the field, you rarely hear somebody from the fans on a sport like soccer because it doesn't translate as well down on the field, right?
Like basketball.
In basketball, you're like 15 feet away.
Literally.
Right? An indoor stadium.
Right.
And, I'm not a big basketball fan, so I don't go to a lot of basketball games, and I'm sure it's pretty common in terms of games to do that. But it just struck me, maybe it was because it was the girls' game, or maybe because of the show, I've become more aware, which I think is one of the benefits of listening to this show, is that you start to think about things in your normal everyday life,
right,
like a sporting event, of things that seem either not fair or not moral or, take issue with.
Yeah, no, I get that. And probably as much as anything, it was, I think there was two things that stood out. One, this was the basketball game and the final basketball game for your goddaughter, Anna, right? That's one. And two, it probably really stuck with you and struck you simply because of the public address announcer actually mentioned that. They mentioned the fact. Now, let me ask this. What do you think they were talking about? Because in the sport of basketball, is just like soccer, there's no like written rule, first of all, and unlike golf and tennis, for instance, in which there are unwritten rules, and in fact, I don't even think they're written, but the referees in those games, and there are what are called golf referees, and they make sure everybody's quiet during a putt, during a drive, whatever the case is. In fact, the only time you can make noise is after the ball's been struck. Then you can kind of like cheer the ball. And if you think about it, what sense does that make, right? People are, get in the hole, right? They're cheering the ball, and it doesn't really make any sense to actually do that. And in tennis, they'll even say it at Wimbledon, at the French Open and so forth, they'll speak in that, their broken English and so forth and say, everybody please be quiet. Because if even one person yells for instance, while the person's serving, that ball's in the air, that person often will grab the ball and they'll retoss it again after the umpire says something to the crowd. Now,
and I think we've both heard it on golfers that sometimes somebody will yell right before a golfer hits it, and people will be mad. The player will be very mad, and
they're
may
frustrated.
even get a chance to do it again. But those are kind of sort of expected, behavior at those particular events, and enforced behaviors. Basketball is something different, right?
Yeah, it is, and I know what you mean about like an outdoor sport versus an indoor sport, but hockey is indoor, right? And think about a guy going for a penalty shot, which they skate onto the puck from mid-ice, and, there's a challenge between them and the goalie and so forth. And the crowd's going crazy. Yeah. But I do know what you mean, that there seems to be a slightly different flavor here because of the fact that the person's sitting there, and it's almost like a putt. It should be treated like a putt, like just let the person. But, of course, that's not a part of our lore in sport. That's certainly not what any fan or a group of fans have been asked to do in any aspect of the game, from grade school up to up to pro basketball. I just think maybe our friend Carlos Herrera was a little sensitive because his goddaughter was involved. Is that possible?
Absolutely. Although they were doing it for the opposing team, so one of the family members to my right, he was kind of laughing every time the guy would do that to the opposing team, and I was just like, I'm a little bit more of a purist when it comes to fair play. I just like having athletes try to do their best without, being mocked or try to. I mean, that to me seems like a very cheap way of affecting the game, and it would. I imagine it does at some level. Yeah, no. In fact, people have gone too far with that. First of all, with what they've said. In fact, administrators and people that are responsible for the people at basketball games and football games and so forth, but especially basketball games, because I think the biggest one is when people are shooting free throws, right? And what they've done are one of two things. They use obscene language, which is inappropriate. But the second thing they've done is they'll literally pull out a poster of something that is really distracting or gory or completely inappropriate. And your mind can take you where you want on that. But once they start doing things like that, I think that's when they should be removed from the game, and they've taken the little situation too far.
I was thinking the same thing when you were just saying that about the free throws, because most of the time the player goes up to try to make his shots, and the opposing side will start screaming so loud, trying to break his concentration to make him miss those shots. And
Chris, Carlos and I were talking about this off air yesterday, and I used the example of somebody that you should be, in fact, an indoor stadium that you should be familiar with as anybody in sport, and that who is a big opponent of NC State and is known for the decibel level of a basketball game. Duke, right?
Yeah, like Duke.
Cameron Indoor Stadium. In fact, I think they've measured this to a certain degree because it's indoors and the amount of people and how close they are to the court and so forth, that the decibel level in there is really loud. And they, of course, are allowed to distract those free throw shooters in any aspect of the game as much as they possibly can, again, without being inappropriate in any way.
Yeah, and it also relates to the NFL, too, because you can hear the crowd like trying to get really loud so that that the other players can't hear the quarterback when he starts making the calls. They
That's
get
right.
so loud, and they don't know.
I'm totally fine with that.
What to do
like,
on the
to
play.
me, it's like a group effort. You're in their opposing team. That's kind of the benefits of home advantage. But this is kind of like singularly one person, right?
Yeah.
Like,
In other words, let's say there was 500 people there, 499 of them were being respectful, and that one guy wasn't, right? Is that what you're
that's
saying?
exactly right.
Folks, you're listening
Throw
to
them
Faith.
out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Folks, you're listening to Faith in Sport here on Carolina Catholic Radio. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. We're being joined for our hit and miss conversation with Carlos Herrera, a certified soccer coach up in the Washington, D.C. area. Thank you for joining us today. Carlos just had his miss. Mine is a hit, Carlos, and it has to do with what happened last week. And my hit, and get this, Chris, it's what you wouldn't think to start. It's the human brain. The human brain, in particular, its ability to improve on a given concept, such as making the world of sports safer. And you're going to appreciate this being a NASCAR fan. This improvement was demonstrated in NASCAR and directly resulted in saving the life of NASCAR driver Ryan Newman in a crash in the final lap of last Monday's.
Yeah, did you see that crash?
Yeah, I did. I watched that. And think about all the changes that have been made since 2001 when Dale Earnhardt was the last big-name driver to die. Right? And he's not the only driver. And certainly before him, there was a lot more people. But there was a lot of changes that have come over the sport. And human beings... And I don't mean this facetiously, but in an effort to make the world of sport safer, and in particular NASCAR safer, NASCAR safer. There's several things that they have done to make the sport safer, to allow these guys to see another day. And in particular, Ryan Newman, he's out of the hospital now. He's functioning fully. I think he has a big headache, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But he wasn't hurt by the flames, and I don't think there's any long-term injury that he's going to suffer as a result of this. Now, I'm just wondering, you probably know more about this than I do, Chris. Is he going to come back and drive soon, or is it too soon to say some stuff?
I think he probably will, because, he was able to walk out of the hospital on his own, and I'm thinking he probably doesn't want to miss too many races before he gets back in there and starts driving again. But it just shows that how fast those cars go, especially at Daytona and Talladega, where they race with the restrictor plates, where you have to bump draft each other to push each other up to the front to take the lead, and if you don't bump draft correctly, that just can send the car airborne, like did Ryan Newman.
Absolutely. And there was
Newman actually talked about that his team, the number 6 car apparently, which is I forget who it's being driven by, or they had somebody else was going to step back from one of the other cars so that he could get in to race the next race. So he's already planning on racing, and the team's already planning on him racing. So
interesting.
He's not going to miss any time.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Did you know it was 19 years to the day from when Dale Earnhardt died?
Right.
Today
in a car accident. When Ryan Newman's crash was.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. No kidding.
Yeah.
In fact, that is so interesting because it was bumped because of the rain. So the actual race took place on the very day in which Earnhardt died. I did not know that until this moment. Very good, Carl.
Well, those are some of the great things that you learn on this show.
Yeah.
Full of information.
Absolutely. In fact, I want to take this a step further. Here's some of the specific inventions or improvements that have been made. It's what's called the Hans device, H-A-N-S, and it attaches to the driver's helmet and is designed to prevent skull fracture. They've improved the actual helmets. They're safer suits. The restrictor plate on cars has made a change in the game, in particular how fast and so forth. And then there's safer walls and barriers around the track. And that's just to name a few things that they've actually created over the last few years. And it's frustrated some. But let me say this. There have been many who have hesitated to accept these changes since the risk of injury and death has decreased. But think about it. If things like this were announcing that someone else's life can be put at risk to entertain us, right? Then we have to really think and put things in perspective. Don't we want safety over excitement? If not, it's time to do a thorough examination of our hearts and our conscience. And I do understand that there's a give and take, right? With faster cars, it's more exciting to watch. But there needs to be a balance there. We want to slow it down to a certain extent, and it's just like the speed limit. In fact, that's a really good analogy. We know that in Europe, where there is unlimited speed, like on the Autostrada in Italy and on the Autobahn in Germany, I've been on those. I can't tell you how fast people drive unless you're experiencing that. You are on a straightaway, and I'm not exaggerating, a mile or 2 mile down the road, behind you, you see a glimpse of a car. And you're like thinking to yourself, I'm fine right here. Within about 20 seconds, that car comes right up on you. And I remember when that happened, I was driving 120 miles an hour. I'm not exaggerating that. That car came right up on me. I couldn't believe it. And here's what they found out, that even though there's less crashes in Italy and Germany, for instance, when they do have crashes, there's more fatalities, which makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing. It's here why we want to control the speed limit, you know? Mm-hmm. Carlos, you look like you have something to say, buddy.
No, just to me, if you actually see the Dale Earnhardt crash and you see Ryan Newman's crash, Dale Earnhart's crash doesn't look significant, right?
No.
But the wall was solid concrete, right?
That's right.
And he did not have that what do you call it, the Hans?
The Hans device.
Yeah, he refused.
Device. And when you look at it, and you see the wall take the impact on this, what they have now, which is basically something they've added to the concrete wall to absorb collisions. I mean, it was a head-on collision, but you see the wall absorb all that impact. I mean, if nothing had changed, Ryan Newman would be dead, because then he also got hit, T-bone by the other driver going, I don't know how many 100 miles an hour, and it crushed some of his cage, and that cage had been improved as well to save people. I mean, it was unbelievable, that crash. If you see it, it's really frightening.
Yeah. It is. Well, let's switch gears because we got a couple more minutes left, but I want to talk about another pseudo miss here on Faith in Sport. By the way, this is where we apply our Catholic faith to all aspects of sports. So whether you're an athlete, a coach of athletes, whether you're an administrator in the world of athletics, you're a referee or a parent of those athletes, this is the show for you. So thank you for joining us, because we're going to weave character, morality, and ethics into our conversation regularly.
And that was a great segue, by the way, there, John. You went from NASCAR and shifted gears.
That's right. That's not bad. Yeah, very good. I don't think I even did that on purpose. But this next miss is going to be given to Max Kellerman. And Max Kellerman is kind of like the boxing analyst and boxing expert that ESPN has hired, and he's been on there for years. And this past weekend was one of the biggest boxing matches, especially at the heavyweight division, I would say in years. And it was between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, and it went to the 7th round in which the fight was called. And Chris, are you ready with that clip?
Yeah.
All right, so let me set this clip up. This is Max Kellerman, this boxing expert from ESPN, talking about the referee calling the match. In fact, giving the win to Tyson Fury. The match is ended after a fury of punches, no pun intended there, from Fury, and he took a particular, there was a disagreement in his heart about the fight ending. Let's hear what he had to say about the referee's decision on this fight.
Everyone's talking about it was a great stoppage. Honestly, I understand why they stopped it.
Right.
The heavyweight championship of the world is the one time where I understand when the fighter says, I'm willing to risk my life to do this.
He should, yeah.
I'm willing to sacrifice on the altar of greatness.
Yes.
I think the corner has to take that seriously. And Deontay has the kind of power, even though he looked like he was about to topple, he was dangerous until the end. Even if it looked like he wasn't. The man has unnatural power.
Carlos, what's your thoughts when you hear that?
It makes me sick to my stomach. I think of the Romans and the lions.
Yeah.
And I think this is, it really is for the fans and the people that want to see, as the saying goes, the car wreck, the car crash.
Right.
All the people that stop along the road, they love to see stuff that's out of the norm, and somebody going as far as dying on a mat, they think that makes the sport even better, and I couldn't disagree more.
Yeah, and in fairness to the situation, in fairness to our view on this, because I agree with you that this is really disappointing. As a educated, insightful commentator as he is known to be, I think he overstepped his bounds here. I think he was speaking to the small percentage of folks that want to see kind of like any fight and anything like this go to the end where the person may not come away walking or talking and maybe even die as a result of it. And I think that if they left this up to Deontay Wilder and other fighters, and even their corner, that some people may disagree with it, but smarter, wiser heads must prevail in this situation. And in fairness to the situation, Carlos, he was greatly criticized this past 24 hours, was Max Kellerman, and I thought it was all deserved. And I have a feeling he's going to address this somehow. He might even make an apology.
I think he should. I mean, I'm reading here one of the articles, and it apparently says that Deontay, at some point after the fight, he said, he was quoted saying, "I just wish that my corner would have let me went out on my shield.
Yeah.
I'm a warrior."
Yeah.
And I think this goes back to also an aspect of I think our faith and even the theology of it, like passion. This is about passion. When you're in there fighting, you don't want to go down. You want to keep fighting. He was getting crushed.
He was,
and at some point, somebody in cooler heads, wisdom needs to prevail, because if it was up to passion, you'd either kill somebody or be killed. And what does that do to your family, your friends, for what?
That's right. No, that's well stated, buddy. Listen, we've run out of time. I'm not going to keep you any longer. Thank you for joining us again, Carlos Herrera, and we'll hear from you next time, buddy. You take care.
Always a pleasure. Have a great show, John.
Okay, man. Thank you. That was Carlos Herrera, certified soccer coach up in the D.C. area, and he joins us just about each and every Monday to talk about our hit and miss. I always think he has really good insight, and he speaks from the heart, which is all good stuff. Chris, at this point, we're going to have Father Kirby coming up after the break, but before we go to the break, let's do
Weekend Headlines.
Dun, 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 dun.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat. The human drama of athletic competition.
And it's time now for Weekend Headlines with Dr. A on faith and sport.
Well, here's what we're going to do today, folks. We're going to talk about just a couple things, as we normally do. In the world of Major League Baseball, scrimmages and even spring training games are underway virtually every day. And the big win over the weekend, or the big loss over the weekend, Chris, was the Detroit Tigers. This is, of course, 3 weeks out from Game 1. But no, my Tigers played your Atlanta Braves.
Yep.
And then, the Braves succumbed to the great Tigers.
Yep.
And the reason I respect this so much is that the Braves know how bad the season's going to be for the Tigers.
Yeah.
So they let them have this win, albeit not important or doesn't go against the record, because it's not a regular season game. But I like the Braves more right now, because they know the Tigers aren't going to win much this year, and they let them win yesterday, 5-1.
Yeah, I think Snitker probably told them, "Hey guys, just take it easy on those Tigers, because you know how their actual season's going to go. So this is the preseason, so take it easy on them."
That's right. So in the world of college basketball, let's switch there. There's actually big news, because there's a new top one team. But also the big news is that last week's number 4, San Diego State, they suffered their first loss. They're now 26-1. Anyway, the top 5 are Kansas, Baylor, Gonzaga, Dayton, and then the aforementioned San Diego State. And I'm going to take a look. Duke is still number 7, so that all the more. That was a great win by NC State last week.
That's right.
We'll see what happens. NC State, and who's their next game against?
The Carolina Tar Heels.
Tomorrow night.
Yes,
That's right. Yeah,
and I'm hoping that their second round with them, they'll come out with the win this time.
And I don't think there's any question whether NC State will make the tournament, but there's a big question whether UNC will. I don't think they have a chance.
Yeah.
Yesterday in the Mexican Championship, Patrick Reed won, and next up is the Honda Classic. In the NBA, we're at the halfway point, and I don't think it's any surprise the two best teams in their respective divisions are the Milwaukee Bucks and the LA Lakers. In fact, today, 3 weeks after the death of Kobe Bryant, his daughter, and then a few other people on that helicopter, today they've reserved the LA. Oh, I forgot the name of the Staples Center in Los Angeles where the Lakers play. They reserved that, and there's going to be a memoriam for Kobe and his daughter. So there's something. In fact, my guess is if you change the channel enough, you'd probably be able to see that on TV. Well, there you have it, folks. Sports headlines that may actually change your life.
That's right.
Stay tuned, folks. We're going to take a break, and then we'll come back with Father Jeffrey Kirby right after this.
And before we go to break, we want to mention to you that you've got plenty of opportunities throughout the week to catch an encore presentation of Faith and Sport here on Carolina Catholic Radio. Just go to our website, carolinacatholicradio.org, or on the app, and go to the Carolina Catholic Radio EWTN program calendar, and you'll see all the times that we have a encore presentation of Faith and Sport throughout the week. So if you miss any of Faith and Sport live, you can catch up on your Faith and Sport on one of our encore times throughout the week. Just check out our website at carolinacatholicradio.org or our Carolina Catholic Radio app, and you can find out every time that you can hear Faith and Sport throughout the week here on Carolina Catholic Radio, AM 1270. Also streaming live at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. And we've got more Faith and Sport live coming up right after the break. Stay tuned.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tammy Harris, and I'm a co-founder of the new nonprofit Carolina Family Coalition. I'm asking you to please mark your calendars for Thursday, March 19th, the Feast of St. Joseph, for a special event at the Cathedral of St. Patrick that will help defend the family in our secular culture. Catholic pro-life leaders in Charlotte are launching a new organization to defend and promote the traditional values related to life, family, and culture in Charlotte from a Catholic perspective. So please save the date and join us on the evening of Thursday, March 19th from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Cathedral of St. Patrick in Charlotte. For more information about this event, please visit our website, prolifecharlotte.com. Again, that's prolifecharlotte.com. We thank you for your support and look forward to seeing you there.
This is the Carolina Catholic Community Calendar. I'm Pam Cullen. On Saturday, February 29th, St. Peter's will present an opening Lenten retreat with the theme Responding to God's Grace in Times of Temptation, beginning at 8:30 a.m. in Biss Hall. Visit stpeterscatholic.org to sign up. Queen of the Apostles is offering a small group Lenten study, How Christians Face the Future, Hellos and Goodbyes, beginning Tuesday, March the 3rd for 4 weeks. For details, go to faithformation@queenoftheapostles.org. Building Better Caregivers is an important workshop at St. Mark's beginning Tuesday, March the 10th from 1 to 3:30 for 6 weeks. Reduce stress, improve your health, and plan for the future. Useful information and resources available. Snacks provided. Contact stmarknc.org for details. Send your upcoming parish event to feedback@carolinacatholicradio.org. For the Carolina Catholic Community Calendar, I'm Pam Cullen. God bless y'all.
Gentlemen, this is Jason Murphy again with the Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas. The countdown is now on for the March 7th event at St. Matthew's Catholic Church. We have a dynamic lineup of speakers including Father Larry Richards and guest Master of Ceremonies Dr. Bill Fairfelder of Belmont Abbey College. Mass will be offered by Vicar General Father Patrick Winslow and assisted by the seminarians of the Diocese of Charlotte. You won't want to miss this day of faith, fellowship, and prayer. Go online now and register at www.catholicmenofthecarolinas.org. Be a better Catholic, be a better man. For the Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas, this is Jason Murphy.
AM 1270 Catholic Radio Charlotte is the flagship station of the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, an affiliate of EWTN. Local Carolina Catholic Radio features up to 8 minutes of local programming every hour with 3 ways to listen: on AM 1270 radio, on our website, and on our mobile app. If you believe in local Carolina Catholic Radio, the future is now. Help keep us on the air with a tax-deductible donation today at carolinacatholicradio.org.
And we are back with more Faith and Sport live on this Monday afternoon on your Carolina Catholic Radio, AM 1270 Charlotte. Also streaming live on carolinacatholicradio.org and the Carolina Catholic Radio app. I'm producer and co-host Chris, and your host once again is Dr. John Acquaviva.
Here they go, that crazy crowd again. Hey, folks, we're going to have Father Jeffrey Kirby join us here on the air in a minute. And, Chris, remember just before the break, we were talking about the memorial for Kobe Bryant and his daughter. And during the break, I went online, in USA Today, through the website are streaming it. So, in fact, it started at 1 o'clock, so we don't want to discourage anybody from listening to this show. So maybe after the show's over, you can head on over to USA Today.
Right.
If you're a big fan of Kobe Bryant and the Lakers and so forth, and you can check that out. But, folks, either way, thank you for joining us here on Carolina Catholic Radio today. This is Faith in Sport, where we apply our Catholic faith to all aspects of sport. And in particular, we like to talk about and weave into the conversation character, ethics, and morality as it relates to the world of sport. Well, I've talked about Father Kirby a couple times here on the show. Let's bring him on right now. He's the pastor of Our Lady of Grace in Lancaster, South Carolina, in the Diocese of Charleston. Father Kirby, welcome to the show.
Hello, John. Thank you for the opportunity.
So, Father, let me give some background, and so hang with me here, and I just want to give some background to our listeners, and then let's start our conversation. So 2 months ago, as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, we discussed on this show that the Archdiocese of Detroit now has a policy that states no practice or games can be played on Sunday by the Catholic high schools or teams in the CYO. Now, Father Kirby, you've been the chaplain of 2 different Catholic high schools here in the Diocese of Charleston and have made similar suggestions and not have offered a policy, so to speak, to the coaches there. And this was not a mandate, but just a suggestion. And what facilitated this recommendation to those coaches and athletes?
Yes, so some listeners might be aware, in the Catholic school system, there's a principal who holds governance over the school, and then usually a chaplain's assigned, predominantly a priest. Mm-hmm. And the priest has moral authority in order to assist with the Catholic identity and to provide guidance in terms of policies or procedures that reflect that Catholic identity. And I've had the opportunity to be a chaplain of 2 high schools, 2 Catholic high schools, and in both schools, with the coaching staff and administration, I was a strong supporter that there be a Sunday ban on practices for our sports teams. I thought that was so important, first and foremost because it is shocking how little time families spend together. And I thought, as Christians, as believers, we know that the Sunday meal especially is so important that the Christian family is together. So in the afternoon, ideally after worship, that the family would be together. It's not the opportunity to cram in more practice time and to take these young people away from their homes. So really basing that argument of the Sabbath, I really pushed with our coaching staff and with administration that we really should not be having practices on Sunday.
And how was that received overall? I noticed you laughed.
They went over like a pregnant pole vaulter. But truth be told, there are some really godly men and women in coaching who very much welcomed the suggestion. I think that it was a consolation to them because they could then give an authoritative explanation to parents. Could say, hey, this is what the chaplain recommends. We really don't need to be doing this because sometimes that pressure is from parents to coaches, because they want their children to be successful, so they put this pressure on coaches for more practices and more conditioning and so on. So, there were coaches that were very receptive and appreciative. Stopping me in the hall and saying, thank you for that memo. That was really helpful. And, of course, there are some coaches who thought it was completely ridiculous. Chaplain doesn't know what's going on. We have to be competitive. This is the real world. These typical arguments.
Right.
From administration, it was decided never to make it a policy in either school, but certainly welcomed the counsel and the moral guidance of the chaplain. But it was diverse, regrettably.
Yeah, I bet it was. In fact, I think anybody that's been in any leadership position knows that the basis of leadership is making decisions, and often those decisions are not going to be received by everybody, even though there's wisdom, there's reason behind it. In this case, morality is behind it. In fact, in particular, the 10 Commandments are behind it. But what I'm hoping and what I pray for is as these coaches, parents, and players age and they gain spiritual development and they gain perspective, that they're going to look back and see your policy, or at least your suggestion, as wisdom. And the good thing was some of them accepted it right from the beginning as that.
Absolutely. In fact, oftentimes, I would argue with some of the coaches who would speak about success and it's competitive environment and so on. You know, I take them back to the story of Moses in the book of Numbers. You know, God told Moses to speak to the rock, and Moses thought the command was ridiculous. He refused to do it.
Yeah.
Instead, he struck the rock with the stick, and from the rock emerged water.
Yep.
Israelites hailed Moses for success, right? But it grieved God, and God said, Moses, because you could not trust me, you will not enter the promised land. So if Moses had done what God had commanded, the people would have thought he was ridiculous, but he would have been faithful. Instead, he chose to bypass fidelity and instead go for earthly success, which it looked as if he had achieved that. And I oftentimes use that as an example across the board, and especially in this case with coaching staff, that, you know, success isn't always what we think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And as believers, we look from the perspective of eternity. And our greatest success is that we were able to accomplish things in light of fidelity to what God has called us to live, in light of His commandments. And that's a hard sell, especially if a person's not, you know, in the proper place in terms of their own discipleship.
That's right.
I just want to say, and I'm so grateful, John, you do this show and the witness you give, because the authority and the power of a coach over his or her athletes, it is amazing.
That's right.
You know, the moral authority that these men and women have, and why would you not use it for good?
That's right.
You know, yes, make them great athletes, demand the best, push them to excellence, but not just in terms of their bodies, in terms of the sports, but, you know, bring that same excellence to their souls. You know what I mean? Like, form these young people to be good people, citizens, believers, and athletes.
That's right. Folks, we're talking to Father Jeffrey Kirby, pastor of Our Lady of Grace in Lancaster, South Carolina, in the Diocese of Charleston. You're listening to Carolina Catholic Radio. This is Faith in Sport. We apply our Catholic faith to all aspects of sport. And Father, yes, I agree. In fact, one of the things that the Catechism tells us is that, you know, we have the right to a lot of things, and a lot of people have rights in a lot of different situations. But the Catechism also talks about the responsibility. And thinking of, I think it's around 1,200 Catholic high schools and middle schools, and virtually every one of them offers sports. And what an opportunity the principal, the athletic director, and the coaches have. It's not just a responsibility, but what an opportunity that they have. And the one thing that I will say, and I guess this is kind of coming back to our original question, is that you can bet, even for some of those people that you made that suggestion to at those high schools a couple years ago, they probably see it in a different light, and thank God. And let me ask you this. If this opportunity is brought up to you again, let's say Our Lady of Grace gets offered opportunity for some land and maybe a grade school, or you get sent to a different parish and you're suddenly the chaplain of that high school as well. Would you do anything different in the way that you approach it? What would be different, if anything?
Yes, I think if I was definitely in a position of governance, so as a pastor of a large parish, or, you know, please God, Our Lady of Grace continues to grow, and eventually there's a school.
Yeah.
In a position of governance, it would be a non-negotiable that there would be a Sunday ban on practices or athletic events. And, you know, to me, it's like if coaches don't like that, then of course we seek the conversion of hearts, that they understand, especially if they're good coaches. But at the end of the day, if they're just not on board, they don't understand the Catholic vision, then we wish them well, and they need to pursue some other institution.
That's right.
Because at some point, as Catholics, we have to realize that our identity is not simply in our own hearts or our own families, but our institutions themselves have to be imbued with the Catholic spirit. For example, that means our Catholic schools should be serving meat on the Fridays of Lent. It means that, you know, we should allow the Mass to be not some random, extraordinary thing that happens every blue moon, but is really understood as the heart and the summit and source of the school's way of life. And that also spills over into athletics. You know, for example, not simply don't practice on Sunday, but are our coaches leading prayer before practices?
That's right.
You know, are our coaches giving witness to Christian virtue by their conduct and their speech and various things? So, you know, for us as Catholics, we know what success looks like when it's in fidelity to God, and we know that it only makes us better. And helping a coaching staff to understand that is so important. Now, when I first became the chaplain of my first high school, one of the older priests asked me, he said, do you know who your first group is that you are ministering to? And I just kind of laughed. I was like, yeah, the students. You know? And this older priest got frustrated, and he said, no. He said, the first group that you minister to are the faculty. He said, because if you're doing it just directly to the students in terms of this witness, then you will constantly be putting out fires.
That's right.
But if you convert the faculty to the way of life, the Christian way of life, then every faculty member becomes a representative, a missionary to the young people. And that has stuck with me a lot.
That's right.
You know, because if you get any principal or chaplain can rally and get the coaching staff on board, then every coach with every team becomes a missionary, an ambassador. Every team becomes an opportunity for growth in the Christian way of life.
That's right. In fact, a conversation I had last year with Dr. Bill Thierfelder, the president of Belmont Abbey, his major, in fact, it could be even his main objective, is to increase the amount of faithful Catholics in his faculty because of what you just said. If he has to put out less fires if he starts the leadership at the top. So, yeah, that message is heard loud and clear. Folks, we're speaking with Father Jeffrey Kirby, pastor of Our Lady of Grace in Lancaster, South Carolina. This is Faith and Sport here on Carolina Catholic Radio Network. And Father, I'll leave you with this, and this might be as in depth as a topic we can get into and how it relates to sport. But you mentioned to me off air that the Beatitudes that Christ has given us and left us with can guide us in how we view sports on the Sabbath. Tell us about that.
Yes, I think the Beatitudes are a beautiful overlay of a healthy way of life, a happy way of life. The tenets of the Beatitudes can be found in the Jewish scriptures, in the Islamic Torah, and then, of course, preeminently as they were given by our Lord himself. And it's a blueprint for just, again, this pursuit of happiness that covers all the areas of life, including our entertainment, our sports, and we really just try to live this way of life, then we can find all that we're searching for. I think that, a victory in sports that is not accompanied by spiritual health is an empty victory. And we want every young person, every athlete, when they achieve that success, to have a full and holistic success. And the Beatitudes are the way to go.
Absolutely. Father, I'm going to ask our listening audience to pray for you and your continued service to the church. And before you go, can you give us a blessing as you leave our program?
Absolutely. Heavenly Father, we ask your blessing upon all those with sincere hearts who truly seek to do your will. We ask your blessing upon our coaches who help your young people to know you, to understand the path to excellence and happiness and virtue. We ask your blessing upon John and his efforts with the show, and all the listeners, that they might see your face and know always of your love and mercy through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Father, thank you very much, and I'll see you soon either way.
Sounds good. God bless you.
Okay, God bless you, Father. Father Jeffrey Kirby, pastor of Our Lady of Grace in Lancaster, South Carolina. And you've heard the trials and tribulations that he had in trying to instill virtue into those coaches, into those athletes. And one of the main ways in which we can do that is just by making the suggestion or even making it a policy of no practice or games on Sundays. But as you heard from that, he was met with a great deal of resistance. But we as the faithful, we certainly have an opportunity to encourage our athletes, encourage our parents, encourage the coaches to adopt that, especially if we're in a Christian community.
Yeah, like the analogy he used, it went over like a pregnant pole vaulter.
I know, that was perfect because, in fact, he probably waited for me to say something like that. I thought that was. I'm glad you brought that up because he said so many cool things there that we easily could have forgot that. Well, listen, folks, we're going to end with the Pope quote of the week, but first we have the quick Q&A with Dr. A. Chris. So what do you got for me?
First up, the NFL is considering 17 games and more playoff games. Will it happen?
I doubt it. And yeah, well, the JJ
got to make room for the XFL, huh?
Well, the thing about this is, of course, it's one less preseason game because right now they play 4 and then 16 regular season games, and what they want to do is cut it down to 3 preseason games and go to 17. But as soon as this policy was introduced, and clearly, like so many things we've talked about in this radio station, they'll send it out into social media and they'll send it out into the airspace, and they want to see what people's opinion is first. So in other words, no policy has been actually drawn up. There's been no official ruling on it from the NFL commissioner and so forth. So what they do is they put it out there and they go, what does everybody think? But Texans great J.J. Watt immediately responded with a hard no. And Richard Sherman, the outspoken defensive back for the 49ers, formerly of the Seattle Seahawks, said, I fully support J.J. Watt on this. But when they took a step back after all these comments, the players were thinking, well, maybe we can get something more out of this. And, of course, that's ultimately, I think, what the NFL would be offering, because I think to offer one more game, the players wouldn't just go, well, okay, that's fine with me. They're going to ask for two things in particular if this goes through. They're going to ask for greater compensation. In other words, certain increase in the percentage of their paycheck. They're going from 16 games to 17 games. That's a whole lot more money for the NFL for obvious reason. There's going to be one more playoff game, which is going to generate in both divisions. It's going to generate a whole lot more money. And the other thing that they're asking for is health care for a longer period of time. In other words, they're only covered for a certain period of time, but I don't think there's any question. All the time and effort that they put into that sport and how much damage they can occur from their head to their toe, they should cover them to the day they die.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me that they're asking for longer coverage. Geez, that Players Association should be asking for coverage until the day they die. Right. And maybe not for everybody who plays just one game, but maybe for anybody who plays, say, more than 3 years. 4 years for sure. So you're playing that long. That's like working 25 years in another job. My goodness. Think about this, folks. All right, question number 2, brother.
Number 2, John Beelan is out as the Cleveland Cavaliers coach, and the players seem to have ousted him. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. A?
I know. Well, this certainly shows. Now, just a little bit of background. John Beelan was he's a college coach his entire professional career, at least in which he was known. He was at University of Michigan, took him to 2 championship games in the last 5 years. He was at West Virginia before that, has a long history. He's not a young guy. And then he finally took the bait with the big contract going to the Cleveland Cavaliers. He didn't even make it through his first year. And if nothing else, you ask me, what are your thoughts? This shows how powerful the NBA and professional athletes in particular are.
Right.
Because they banded together and they said, let's get this guy removed. And they've been outspoken about his practices, how he treats the individual player, some of the terminology or the language that he's used for them. And the Cavs players, at least in the eyes of someone like Charles Barkley, were anything but professional. In fact, Barkley ripped into the Cavs team since he felt that they had a direct impact on getting Beeline fired. And he's like, that's not your job, is to select who's coach. You just listen to the coach. And one of the things that he said was, you guys got to remember, and he was talking to the listening audience on TNT when he said this. He says, you guys got to remember who is saying this. These are anywhere between 20 and generally 29-year-old people who have no experience in managing or coaching. They were losing. And I thought it was interesting that Barkley said, remember, these guys are not very good. They don't have very much talent. And he goes, and I don't think they're particularly hard workers, and they're blaming somebody else at the fact that they're losing. He goes, look at the fact you're not talented. Look at the fact that you don't try very hard. Maybe that's why you're not losing. Instead, they're like, let's get rid of our coach. And in other words, all they did is divert the attention away from themselves to Beeline. But the fact is, Beeline's gone now. Whoever else is, tell the truth, I'm sure one of their assistant coaches stepped up. But most likely, they're going to still head down that path. They're still going to be one of the worst teams. And I'm a big fan of Beeline, right? I'm a University of Michigan guy. He coached University of Michigan, did a great job with that program, brought him back to life. But I agree with Barkley said. He goes, I've never heard a bad thing about Beeline. And here are the players just banded together to get rid of him. So I tend to lean toward, even though I don't know the whole story, nobody ever will, but I tend to lean toward Barkley and saying, that was kind of a stinky move.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we got a couple minutes left here. Let's do this. Let's talk about the Pope quote of the week, and then we'll land this plane, and you guys can join us again tomorrow. Remember, folks, if there's somebody in your life that works at this time and they have a hard time hearing the show live on AM 1270 or listening to it on CarolinaCatholicRadio.org or via the app, Carolina Catholic Radio Network app, be sure to pass it along to them if they're a player, if they're a coach, if they're an administrator or referee, and they're in your group of friends. Tell them about this show and direct them to it. Direct them to CarolinaCatholicRadio.org. And there's, I think, after right now they can listen to it, but tonight and then every day of the week.
That's right.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Yep. And they're all at different times. So you can find a way to listen to that show. And, of course, we love the support. And by the way, I want to welcome all the guys from my men's group at Our Lady of Grace. I talked to those guys on Saturday morning, and I mentioned to them that our pastor was going to be on, so I invited him to the show. So anybody, shout out to those guys, anybody else listening for the first time, thank you for joining us today here on Faith and Sport.
So if you got no other fans, you've got the men's club.
Men's group, it's called.
Yeah,
men's group. Very good. Well, folks, let's end with this. Our Pope quote of the week. It comes from Pope Pius XII. He reigned from 39 to 58. So, boy, it's going on about 80 years since he was Pope. But he's had some great quotes about the world of sport, and this is one of them, and I'm going to tie it into our everyday life in the world of sport. He said, Pope Pius XII, sport properly directed develops character, makes a person courageous, makes him a generous loser and a gracious victor. And I thought this was a great one to pull out because it goes along with what Father Kirby, our phone guest, was saying just earlier, that we tie our whole spirit into whether we win or lose and how important sports are, and they certainly have a place in our life, right? There's a certain level of importance, and I think it's okay to fall in love with sports, as I have, and as a fan, as a player, and so forth. But somebody told me a long time ago, we are in trouble once we associate with our team, that we're associated in any way with winning and being a winner, and with them losing and us being a loser. In other words, if we identify ourselves with winning and losing because our team wins or lose, we're in for a long, bumpy road, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why our great former Pope said, a generous loser and a gracious victor, is that both are going to happen. It doesn't matter who you're a fan of. Heck, you can be a Yankees fan who's won 27 titles in the last 100-plus years, which is about 1/4 of all the titles that MLB has even offered, that they still have lost 3/4 of the time. It's hard being a fan. It's hard being involved in sport because there's winning, there's losing, there's decisions that have to be made in which we don't come out on the strong end of it. Mm-hmm. And we have to put our Christian faith into perspective and allow it to play out and allow people to win the game and allow for us to lose. And then when we win, we can be a gracious victor. And I thought that was and this goes out to, that was a great quote, of course, and that goes out to athletes, coaches, and the players, of course, as well. So before I hand it off to Chris here, I want to talk about what our current Pope said about sport. And I always like to end the show on this. Sport is not just for professional athletes, but for everyone, for pleasure, for recreation, for improving health, as well as for learning how to be a part of a team and how to win and lose graciously. Boy, there's that sentiment again. That's from our current Pope Francis. Before we go, our special thank you to Carlos Herrera, who joined us in the first part of the program, and for Father Jeffrey Kirby, who joined us in the second part of the program, for being a part of today's show. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Please join us next time here on Carolina Catholic Radio for more Faith in Sport.
That's right, and we want to thank you for tuning in today and remind you can go to our website at carolinacatholicradio.org and find all those encore presentation times. Just go to the tab where it says the programming guide for CCRN EWTN, and it will show you all the encore presentation time that you can catch an encore presentation of Faith and Sport right here on Carolina Catholic Radio AM 1270, also on carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. And we'll meet you back here next Monday afternoon from 2 to 3 for a brand new edition of Faith and Sport Live here on Carolina Catholic Radio Charlotte. And until next week, have a blessed week and a great week. And we'll meet you back here next Monday afternoon from 2 to 3 for more Faith and Sport.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.